the authenticity.
Yeah, that's true, but then I get all weird.
Aha, we're live.
Hello, Dr. Tara. Thank you for joining. So we are live today with my co-host here, Lee Bacon, and we're really just going to talk about writing, about publishing, about big changes in your life that take you in directions that you never thought you would go. So my name is Michelle Ray, and my Substack is called States of Matter. And I'm basically a recovering teacher, aspiring writer, and traveler. And I really focus my writing on travel and transitions and helping people reclaim their own stories. So lately, I've really been interested in publication stories because I'm publishing my first memoir. I'm self-publishing, so every time I hear about someone's publishing story, I get very interested and my ears perk up. And there's so many different ways to publish and to be a writer in this day and age. And I'm very honored and excited to have Lee Bacon talk to us about his life as a writer. So I'll just maybe just give you a super brief introduction, and then I'll just let him talk. So, welcome, Nichabot. And who else joined us? I'm scrolling. Dr. Tara. Okay. And thank you all for joining us. I think, we'll have questions, but anytime you have a question or a comment, feel free to pop it in the chat there. So Lee Bacon, he's an American, but he lives in Germany, and he has published 10 books and really has won some awards, has been very successful, as I said. He's has a deal in the works to make a movie out of one of his books. And by all sort of measures, he has been pretty successful in his career as a writer. So
Mhm.
let's start with that idea. Um, so take us back to your early days. So you have a degree in industrial distribution, and
Yes.
then you moved to Dallas
Mhm.
and became a barista. So how do you go from industrial distributor slash barista
Yeah.
to author? Talk to us about that.
It all happened. Everything was by accident. The industrial distribution thing was an accident. The barista thing was a fortunate accident. So I I I studied industrial distribution, which if anyone out there is kind of wondering what is that, good question. I don't know what it is either, and I spent 4 years studying it. Um, but I mean, basically, it was kind of like I started off in engineering, realized I couldn't cut it as like a straight up, full-fledged engineer. Industrial distribution was kind of like a mix between engineering and business. And I got about halfway through that, the full 4 year like course, and and realized about halfway through, like, I don't want to do this. This isn't for me. I want to be a writer. I enjoy writing. I was writing. That's during college was when I took writing from being like this fun little pastime, little hobby to this thing that I did like every single day, writing in a journal, writing short stories, eventually writing a novel. And meanwhile, I was studying this stuff that has to do with like logistics and just in time shipping or what whatever. Um, and like, but it kind of just felt like too late to change.
Mhm.
So I just kind of like I was like, all right, I'll just finish it up and then I'll probably not be able to get a job as a writer anyway, like who can actually make money from writing. So I'll get this, practical degree and then I'll write kind of in my free time and just kind of, I'll just sort of that'll just be my sort of my salary will come from this sort of boring practical thing, and then my sort of passion will be this writing that nobody will ever read because nobody's going to publish it. Um, and then turns out my practical, money making solution didn't work because like nobody wanted to hire me in industrial distribution. So there went that idea. That's how I ended up in Dallas working at Starbucks because I moved to Dallas uh, like thinking, oh, I'll get a job and this will turn into something. And then nobody wanted to hire me. So I started working at Starbucks, which actually was like the perfect job for that stage in my life because I had kind of no expenses, no responsibilities. I was whatever, 22 years old. And I could just kind of work a bare minimum at a job that, required very little in the way of sort of, it wasn't like anyone expected me to like rise through the ranks of Starbucks or anything. So I could just kind of, you know, make coffees for people, try not to, spill any hot coffee on anyone, and and then earn a little bit of money, and then that's all I needed because my rent was basically, it was like whatever it was, $500 a month. And then I had like no other expenses. And, and I just kind of, in my free time, I would just write. So it was kind of perfect. Had I kind of taken some high pressure, job, like salary, like, office type job and like been expected to kind of prove myself and work these crazy hours, I might have, not had time to sit down and really put in my, you know, time every single day with writing. But because I was at Starbucks and I didn't really, I was happy in the job, but I didn't feel like it was taking too much of my life. I was working maybe 30 hours a week. And then every moment that I wasn't working, I was either hanging out with my friends or I was writing. And that's I feel like that's the time when I really got better at writing, and nothing during that period ever got published. But that's when I became a more serious and like to what I felt anyway as a better writer, even if nothing was getting published.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's such an important step and phase, right? It's just I see this a lot on Substack. Like people come on Substack and they want to grow their audience really quickly, and everything has to happen really fast. But having time to write and having time to develop, I think, is such a important part of the process that isn't sexy, right? Like you were working at Starbucks, but if you didn't have that time in your life, you probably
Mhm.
wouldn't be where you are now. In and
Absolutely not. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
and I think that's definitely a phase that everyone has to go through. But when did you like I've read some of your articles and you talk about being rejected, like being rejected from, literary magazines that you were applying, not applying to, submitting to,
Mhm.
um, and then just sort of like feeling like maybe this isn't for me. And but then, you had got your publishing degree.
Yeah.
um, so maybe talk a little bit about like setbacks or rejections and how that actually shaped into something maybe more positive. And
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think anyone who wants to be, well, probably do anything, but certainly if you want to be a writer, you just have to, ex, you know, accept ahead of time. You're going to hear the word no a lot. It's very rare the person, like Stephanie Myers. I don't know if that rings a bell. The author of Twilight.
yeah.
Apparently, like she just kind of like had this idea in a dream and then kind of wrote it down and then like it became this huge sensation. But um, and I think that was like her first thing. I could be wrong, but
Mhm.
that's pretty rare. And I think most people, it's a slog. And even when you do find some success, that doesn't guarantee you future success, right? So certainly for me, I think the rejection, um, it kind of sharpens you, and it kind of forces you to kind of I think maybe it filters out some of the weaker, the people who aren't as committed, right? You're like, okay, someone who can't hear hears the word no five or six times and is like, okay, I can't handle this anymore.
Mhm.
Probably they weren't destined, they weren't in it for the right reasons anyway, or it wasn't destined to be. So um I think it's just kind of something you have to know you're gonna face and deal with. And so I think for me it was also finding, speaking about these literary journals, like it's kind of crazy that I was writing a different kind of thing. Like now I write middle grade novels, and I
Mhm.
kind of am aiming for sort of more funny and kind of mainstream appeal. Those are tend to be much more kind of, like like literary, right? And which is great too, but that's just not what the kind of stuff I write now. And I've kind of realized, like, I think my voice lends itself more to something that's less literary, even though I still enjoy reading that kind of thing. Um, but I discovered, with some of these journals, like I would sometimes just get a um, I would get like the most sort of like banal, nothing uh, note of approval for one, like something that I'd written, like this wasn't right for us, but it wasn't complete trash. Was like the basic
Yeah,
kind of like
the positive
message.
rejection.
And it was kind of like, yes, this will keep me going. This will like fuel my fire for the next, for the next year. So it was kind of funny. Like, I got nothing but rejection from these places, but I can still remember some of these, like a couple of places that like gave me just the tiniest, like little morsel
Sliver of hope.
of hope. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was basically 10 years of getting rejected before anything ever, anyone ever showed any interest in anything I was writing, like real interest.
Yeah. No, it's incredible like how writers like just stay interested and stay committed to the writing when there's just so much. It's such a slog sometimes, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to be getting something, from within. Like there has to be an inherent drive in order to really make that happen, right? And I
Very true.
totally
Yeah.
get you about 'cause I've started submitting my writing in the last like 6 months, and it's I know what the positive, like, what the good rejections are because 'cause I'm reading, like, I read for Guernica. So, like,
Oh, okay.
and they tell us, like, only send here's the standard rejection letter, and then here's the nice rejection, and really don't just give those out, make sure that it's worthy. So,
Yeah.
if you get a good rejection letter, it's something. It really is, like,
Yeah.
it's that that person thought that you were good. So, and
Well, in
that's
these places, the acceptance, or the like, yeah, I guess the acceptance numbers, like the people who don't get rejected, the people who actually get published, especially coming through whatever slush pile they have, who don't already have some connection to them, it's like nothing. It's like infinitesimal. So if you that there's also a certain amount of just kind of you know uh you have to also understand that like your chances of even kind of even if you do get rejected, it's not necessarily a based on your lack of talent or how
yeah.
good or bad your story is. It's also just like they might have had 1,000 submissions and they're accepting one out of 1,000, and how many of those were they really reading closely, how many of those were just maybe someone was having a bad day, whatever. So I
Oh,
think you also have to like understand that sometimes it's also just a numbers game. You got to just keep putting stuff out there and hope that
yeah.
eventually you're gonna kind of find someone at the right moment on the right day.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely a numbers game, but, eventually someone said yes to you, right?
Yes.
So, I'd love to hear that first publication. I mean, it's just from what I've read, it seemed like your first publication was actually pretty, like, it was kind of a big one. You got a six-figure deal and all of that. Like, how did that happen? Did you query? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, so we're skipping over a big period. I did a master's in publishing,
Yeah.
and I actually worked in publishing. I worked at a literary agency, and I didn't like those connections didn't really help me at the time. Like I didn't when it came time to submit my first novel that ended up getting published to literary agents. I didn't actually use any of those connections because I only worked at an agency for a year, so I really didn't get to know a lot of people.
Yeah.
But that year was really good for me, and I also did an internship and at a big publisher. So all of these, this experience kind of gave me a chance to read a lot of manuscripts and to kind of I don't know, like it was my first time like reading someone else's, other people's work and like kind of assessing other people's work critically. And you kind of realize like you're reading stuff and you're like, oh man, it's so annoying that like people keep making the same dumb mistake. And then a second later you realize, wait, I make that same dumb
Oh, wait a
mistake.
minute. It seems familiar.
Yeah, this is exactly the kind of stuff I'm doing. And so you kind of like learn some of the things not to do, which I think is just as important as learning the things to do. Um, so I think I got better also at just kind of learning how to avoid some mistakes and how to put together a really good query letter. That was like a great because I read like a million query letters.
Yeah.
Um,
Keep talking. I'm gonna
so
put the dog in the room.
okay, yes, I'm happy to talk. So I kind of had that. Hello, dogs. Um, oh, who
He's
do we
so
have here?
annoying. Go
Hi,
ahead.
hi. Very cute. You realize no one's going to care what I have to say if
I know, but
if
he's
you've got
like
this
already
adorable
barking
fluffy
right now.
dog here. Um, anyway, so yeah, so I kind of learned how to put together a good query letter. I learned how to kind of like avoid certain things, certain mistakes, and along the way, I also kind of just figured out like I said, I kind of figured out that middle grade like writing for kids was maybe a little bit more my lane
Yeah.
and kind of writing humor and not trying to kind of write literary stuff that was going to impress the Paris Review, but like trying to write just a funny thing that I would have wanted to read as a kid.
Yeah.
Um, and and so kind of all these things kind of coalesced, right? Like the kind of like working in publishing, um, reading a lot of query letters, learning how to do that, and putting in my 10,000 hours and kind of figuring out like maybe funny commercial kid stuff was kind of like a little bit more my wheelhouse. All these kind of things came together. And so the first thing I wrote for kids that I at least finished for kids was this book called Joshua Dredd. And I queried a bunch of agents and managed to get a good response from a bunch like several different agents actually, which was like after all of these years of getting rejected, to suddenly like have agents like talking me up and like inviting me to their office and like telling me how great my book was. Like this was
Oh, that's
head
amazing.
spinning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it started with the response that I got from agents, and then from there, but it still wasn't a guarantee, right? I think for so long my goal was like to get a literary agent,
Mhm.
and I hadn't thought beyond that. It was just like once I have an agent, my life, it'll be just like the path will be paved for from
Yes,
then
it'll
on.
all become clear.
Yes, I'll everything will be, the clouds will part and I'll know which everything will be like perfect. And of course, that's not how it goes. So what ended up happening was I found, a very good agent and we worked together on the book on Joshua Dredd. In fact, the original title, not many people know this, so this is a little exclusive for the
Oh,
people watching this
exclusive.
live.
You heard it here
Uh,
first.
it was originally called The Disastrous Life of Joshua Dredd. And my agent was like, let's just cut it down to Joshua Dredd. And so that's what we ended up doing, which I think is good because I think, I think you typically, I mean, sometimes that works, but I don't know, you kind of want like something simple and direct. And um, so we ended up doing that, going with that. And eventually we had a, manuscript after going back and forth and revising it
Mhm.
and getting in the best shape possible. We sent it out to a bunch of different, my agent sent it out to a bunch of different publishers and like, and then it just kind of disappeared. It kind of like, floated out there and then nothing happened for a really long time, like months and months and months, and it was kind of like had to reassess my my previous like mindset of like, wait, I thought I had a good agent.
I
I thought
thought it was a
everything was like
big
set and I was going
deal.
to be like just my, you know, everyone was going to be knocking down my door to publish my book. So it didn't happen that way. And I kind of just waited and waited and waited. I don't know if anyone out there has ever kind of been in that situation, whether it's with a book or, maybe you're submitting to agents, maybe your agent is submitting to publishers, maybe it's something else. You're waiting to hear about a job or something. But like you're kind of like every time a new email pops up on in your inbox, you're like, uh-oh, what's this? You're like, like jumping forward and like, oh, it's just from Pottery Barn or whatever. It's like some random junk. um and so it's kind of like I was in that mode for like a month, where it was like every email, every day, every morning was like something important is going to potentially happen today, and then nothing was happening, and then occasionally I would get something like a nice rejection from an editor that would come through my agent, and it was kind of like this slow trickle of rejection, and then finally after like 6 months, I mean, it had been a long time. The I got a one editor wanted to publish the book. And then pretty soon after that, another editor, um, like also wrote back to say she wanted, like they wanted to publish the book too. So this was like kind of the dream scenario where you've got like a little bit of a bidding situation going on, and but it was not a guarantee at all. I think actually probably had that first editor not shown interest, maybe the second editor wouldn't have gotten interested, because it would have seemed, as soon as someone is interested, everyone else it suddenly seems much more exciting, right? So that kind of was the way that it ended up happening, was like it ended up being a little bit of a bidding situation, and then we ended up selling it to Random House, as like a two book deal, and then they ended up coming back later, and the first book did well enough that they wanted to then add a third book to it, which was actually, it was kind of like I was like, hey, by the way, I'm writing a third book. Would anyone like to publish this? It was like, I was like, I'm writing it anyway, so maybe someone wants to publish this. That's kind of
Yeah.
how I work. And and luckily they did, and so they wanted to publish a third book, and so that was kind of like the first thing that ever happened. And then that book it wasn't huge. It wasn't like a massive bestseller, but it did well enough that, it kind of got on some state lists and was published by, uh, you know, international rights were sold in a few different countries, and we ended up selling, um, first film rights, and then that kind of then they were working on it as a TV show, and
Yeah.
that that was something that, sort of was my first sort of experience with, with on the film and TV side, which was kind of, something that I've had with a couple of books now. So yeah, it ended up being fairly successful, but not like a huge, massive success, but it did well.
I mean, I guess it's all relative, but
Yeah.
yeah. I feel successful when I get 25 likes on a post. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
Same.
I mean, with writing, it's like, it's such a, I don't know, there's such a variation of what we consider success as a writer.
Yeah.
And I think in order to, like, making writing your occupation is different than calling yourself a writer or saying writing is your art form or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it's rare for people to really, like, make that distinction. But I think if more people did that, maybe they'd have a more realistic understanding of themselves and what they want. I mean, I've I personally, like, I'm Generation X, right? So, when I was growing up, I mean, I was a huge reader. Like, I would have
Mhm.
loved Joshua Dredd. I would have read the shit out of that book. And, but I never had this understanding that I could publish something. Like, being a writer was like,
Yeah.
"What? That wouldn't that's not me. I couldn't do that."
Yeah.
You have to be famous. You have to be, but, people now can do that, you can self-publish. Like, the
Yeah.
gatekeepers are gone, or, at least, out to lunch or something. So you can, there's just like a different understanding of what's possible now as a
Totally.
writer.
Yeah.
So I think that's a lot of that gives us, a lot of hope. But I just wanted to stop and say hi to Joanna and David and Jessica and Bruce. Thank you for joining. Um,
Hello.
and y'all. So feel free to, like, pop any questions that you have in the chat. Having someone that has as much experience out there, experience with rejection and with success is, I think,
Hmm.
it's very, um, useful. It's useful. He's a useful person to talk to, and, he would be happy to answer your questions. I have just one,
Absolutely.
like, this is off my script, but, like, what kept you, just from giving up, like, all those years of not having success as a writer?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I think it helps that I never saw it during those years of yeah, getting rejected. I never saw it as like, I honestly didn't think it was going to be my career. I was kind of like, this is a thing that I love doing, and maybe someday writing in my free time, I'll manage to get something published. But it just kind of came back to like, it's the only thing that I've ever really been truly passionate about was writing. I mean, I've had other things that I've like enjoyed, but it's the only thing that I've cared about that much. Including jobs that I've had. I've like, and I've never really felt all that. You know, like with the industrial distribution thing, bringing it back to that. I think that's part of the reason why I never got a job there in that, because was I never really I didn't apply myself really to that, because I was always like, I'll just it'll just be my like side gig while I, really focus on writing. And um so I think it kind of it was like the thing that I just loved doing. And I think if you really love writing, you'll just keep doing it, even if you keep getting rejected. And I think you said something earlier about like you have to derive your own
Yeah.
joy from it. And that's kind of that was the case for me.
Yeah. Yeah. You just have to have that inherent motivation to write and
Yep.
think writing as a source of like sharing who you are. Like some people feel like they write to process and then, by processing their life, they grow, like they move to another stage of their life, right? So
Hmm.
it's writing is one of those things that it can be your art, it can be help you process, but it could also, potentially be a career, right? Like you said. I mean, I really relate because I'm a teacher, and that was sort of like a writing adjacent thing for me as well.
Yeah.
When I was 20, or I guess I was 30, so I had already graduated and I had been teaching abroad. I'd been living in Ecuador. And
Okay.
I was like, I'm going to get an MFA. I'm going to really do this writing thing because I'd been writing a lot on the side. And I applied to one school. I applied to NYU.
Okay.
I didn't get in. Like, even if I would have gotten in, like, I probably wouldn't have been able to afford it. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I was
it's
thinking,
expensive.
yeah. But so I think that i- keeping your writing going is important. Like, even if you're working at, whatever your career is, working at Starbucks, whatever it is. I
Yeah.
think that's what writing, or that's what makes Substack so fun and unique, is that you really can feel like a writer and be a writer and have people read your work. I mean,
Mhm.
it's on a much smaller scale, but it doesn't have to be. So, and then, okay, who else has joined us? Jessica. What do we say? Hi. So again, like, feel free to ask questions. I have a couple more here. If nobody else is gonna pop in. Um, let's see. I don't know. We'll do briefly talk about the self-publishing. So I read one of your articles where you were just kind of curious about self-publishing and you
Yeah.
wanted to see how much it cost you, or maybe just talk about like what was your motivation, because you were self-published after you had been pretty successfully published. And would you do it again? Like what's your whole experience with self-publishing?
It's been a great learning process. I I would do it again, but I would do it differently. I think I put too much money into it,
Uh,
honestly. Most of that went toward, in fact, all of that went toward book cover and design. Which is good. I wanted it to feel professional. I didn't want it to just feel like something that I was like, if I'm gonna attach my name to something and expect people to devote their time to it. I want it to feel like as close as it can to something you would find from a traditional publisher at a bookstore.
right.
Um, so that, but it also was like thousands of dollars that I put into that. In terms of like doing cover, working with a professional illustrator and making it look, trying to get it to look as good as it can. And I love the way it turned out, but just the economics of it for me anyway was, just showed that I'm never going to earn that money back.
Yes.
um, so, I also kind of considered that like, it's just the cost of learning a little bit. And so I would probably figure out some way to do it, do a cover more cheaply, maybe go to Fiverr or something, it's like someone who's very good, but just charges you less. Um, One of the things that I learned that I think worked in my favor was I also shelled out quite a bit of money for the audiobook narration for at least the first book. It was a 3-book series called Area 51. No, sorry, Area 52. um,
When's the
yeah, Area 51 is kind of probably would have sold better, because then maybe, people would have been like, "Ooh, I like Area 51." Like,
Yeah.
whereas Area 52, I think, just confused people.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but anyway, so I ended up, paying someone who had worked on some of my previous audiobooks for like things that I'd done in the past that had been done as audiobooks, and I've also done some audio originals for Audible.
Mhm.
And he'd done the voices for some of those. And so this was someone who I knew he was good. I knew that we had kind of a good overlap, and that has actually worked out. I mean, I think that there's a pretty first of all, I think there's the audio space has been grow, it
Yeah.
continues to grow, but also at least now, at least as of last year, there was a lot less like, I mean, there's a million things on Audible too, but compared with Amazon, um, there was a lot less out there, just a lot less like AI slop and a lot less people who just kind of like randomly put out whatever thing that they, some 800-page, book that they just kind of like stream of consciousness through together. Um, that doesn't happen with audiobooks as much because you have to pay someone and have all the technical setup and everything. So anyway, if anyone's watching that and they're kind of thinking about it, maybe find if you can find some affordable way to have someone do an audio, record the audio, or maybe you can record the audio yourself, put it out as an audio thing. I think it could be worth it because that's where I've seen that's the only place where I might actually
Make your
end
money.
up earning some significant money. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was mostly I just viewed it as like, oh, I want to experiment, and I knew that I wasn't going to publish this book in any other format because it just
Yeah.
kind of got lost in the sort of shuffle of other projects. So I was like, either this can sit on a file on my computer, or I can self-publish it and see how it does, and at least then a few people will read it. So I'm glad that it's not just sitting on a file on my computer, but I also had higher hopes for it, and I think it's really something I learned from self-publishing is like I think it can help to have I think having a platform like Substack can help, and you can reach new people that way. But also, like I think a lot of the people who have the most success in self-publishing, it's not because they wrote a great novel or a great book. It's because they're really good at marketing themselves. And maybe they're, kind of good at like doing the little ad, kind of like putting ads out there on Amazon. That's really important. And understanding which keywords to kind of plug in. That stuff is just not, I kind of tried a little bit and that just wasn't for me. But so all this stuff was kind of a learning experience, and some of it was a positive learning experience, and some of it was kind of like just learning what not to do next time if I do it again.
Yeah, and I think it's made that just alone makes it worth it, right? Just having that information. And because you've had other books published, like that's not your first book or your only book, your only
Yeah,
income. But yeah, I mean, I think marketing is a whole nother thing. I mean, sounds like your other big books you've published, with like the top five. So you probably had a lot more marketing. So, I mean, nowadays, even people that publish have to do a lot of their own marketing, which is unfortunate. But some people
yeah,
are better at it than others.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you get bookstores and you get an audiobook usually, they'll kind of pay for the audiobook and do all, handle all the production, and it helps to get it legitimizes your book, and it kind of gets international publishers and will take it seriously. So there are all sorts of advantages to it, and they give you the money up front, which is nice. It's like
Yeah,
you get in advance, and that's always that's their commitment, that's their investment. So hopefully, if they say we're going to give you this many thousands of dollars, like hopefully that's, that doesn't always guarantee that they do very much, but at least hopefully they're going to view it as something like, okay, we've put in some money. We need
yeah,
to,
we've invested.
uh, like try to do something to get people to read this.
Yeah. Yeah, another thing I was gonna add, about your original comment was the idea about, an audiobook kind of setting it apart from just being on Amazon, because Amazon is just thick with, every book out there and
Yep.
people that publish in their sleep, and it's crazy. But, I think I'm gonna pursue that as well with my book because I think I'm such a reader, listener,
Yeah.
reader slash listener, whatever. And I think that's it's a good idea. It's worth the investment. I don't want to read it myself, so I need to find someone. but
Yeah, you can find. I mean, I'd be happy to chat more about that. At some
Sure.
point with you, like offline too, like or not in this space, but
Yeah,
ACX is the kind of Amazon is the Audible sort of platform for that, and there you can like there's like a million different people who are professional audiobook narrators of varying levels um, with varying levels of experience, and some kind of will charge you a lot more. Some are probably just getting their start, and the rates are cheaper. But you can like audition people, and so I think that's a good place to go if you're looking for someone. You could probably find someone who would be very very good, but maybe they're still a little earlier in their career, and probably hopefully their rates would be a bit cheaper. And so if you're looking to do it on a budget, then you can do that, and then you can also find like I did, like that's I kind of saw like, oh, the guy who I've really is one of the top kind of audiobook narrators in the kids space. He's on there. And like I was like kind of surprised to see that you could just solicit someone that way.
yeah,
And so it's like it's not just kind of like, it's kind of the full range of people. So I think it's worth it, and it's they do at least my experience has been very positive.
yeah, yeah. I'm definitely gonna look into it. So I've had a few more people join.
Yeah.
Welcome, Maggie and Charlotte. Do you
Hi,
recognize?
Charlotte.
Are any of these your people, your
I
subs?
know Charlotte. Yeah. Well, I know
Okay.
her through Substack. Yeah.
And Bruce and Jessica. I think Daniel already called out, and Joanna. So thank you for joining us again. This is Lee Bacon, and he's a writer. He has his Substack mistakes were made, which is hilarious. If you don't, if you don't read it, you should definitely sub. I'm even a paid sub, and the
Oh.
the tiered, locked up, whatever behind the paywall articles are really funny, good too. Um, so I think I wanted to move on a little bit.
Yeah.
Self-publishing. Unless anybody has any questions, of course you can pop them in the chat, and we'll talk about whatever you guys want. But so I was, just because I read your stuff on Substack, I know you have a family. You write about your daughters and your family, and I also have a 10-year-old, well, 11-year-old. I got his age wrong the other day. He
Okay.
wrongly corrected me. He's 11. Thank you very much. Um, so talk about how writing with a family has how has it been helpful and also kind of, you know, something to overcome.
Oh man. I'm gonna try to. I could. This could become a 3 hour live session. So
Yeah.
I'll try to keep it brief. Um, it is. It's all. I mean, it's definitely. There are, especially for me, writing for kids. Having kids around, and being in that space. Um, it just kind of changes your mindset, and kind of puts you in the a little bit more in the shoes of a kid. And I'm constantly like in entertainer mode when I'm at home, like not in my writing space, but just in like,
Yeah.
I'm like just trying to crack my kids up. So I kind of care. I think some of that probably carries over into my writing. I'm like, okay, just imagine your audience is like a bunch of sort of easily easily distracted 7-year-olds, and you know that's how I'm imagining everyone who's reading my Substack. It's just a bunch of like sugared up 7-year-olds.
I
um,
usually am.
but
Maybe
of,
wind
of
up.
course, sorry, what's that?
Maybe wind up instead of sugared up.
Yeah, why? Yeah, that too. Yeah. um but I that on a practical level, it does limit, of course, having a family. I mean, it really limits your time that you're able to write, and that's been a challenge for me. Continues to be a challenge for me. It's just like I think I've gone through. I certainly went through a phase where I was like viewing every. All right, I've got exactly 57 minutes until I have to go, pick up my kids from school. Oh wait, now it's down to 56 minutes. Okay, I need to like write and get at least another 100 words in those 56 minutes. Oh, now it's down to 55 minutes, and like you feel like your blood pressure going up as this is
Yeah.
happening, and that's not good. I think I kind of had to kind of accept that except that I'm not going to be as productive as I was pre-kids, and that's okay. It's like I'm in, I really love having a family and having these having kids and what that has brought to my life, and I try to kind of remind myself that they're only going to be this kind of sweet, cuddly age where they actually want to be uh, around my wife and me for a limited period of time. At some point they're going to become teenagers and they're going to like kind of think we're embarrassing and dumb and then I'll have more time to write. So, uh,
Yes, it
except
happens
that
for
right now
everyone. Yeah.
that they still want to be around me, and at the same time that just means I'm not going to write as many books.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that. I feel like I have to kind of put my writing away when my son comes home because
Yeah,
I miss, you just don't have that much time to have like quality interaction with them either. Like they spend so much time at school and then with
yeah,
their friends and and I also like talking to my son about writing. Like when
mhm,
I've I've lately, because I've been so much more focused on Substack and writing, like I am bringing him books that, I know the writers, I know the authors, and he's been, like, so impressed with that. Like, "He's your friend?" Like,
yeah.
maybe he's more like a colleague. We're not friends, but and it's he's really, I think, starting to now actually see me as a writer instead of, just me like scribbling away in my journal in the corner. Like I'm posting on, he's a real like online kid. So
Hmm.
he gives me advice about, my Substack and how to get more followers and stuff like that. So
That's great.
there are ways I think you can bring them in as well, and of course, because you have kids and you write for kids, you can probably have them reading your stuff as well, right? Do they?
Yeah, I with my older daughter, I've read I've read stuff with her. I actually read my first, the Joshua Dredd books with her,
Yeah.
and she's listened to some of the Audible originals, and I consider it, if she's listening to an audiobook that I wrote, I consider that me reading to her.
Yeah.
I think that counts.
Shortcuts.
Yeah.
I don't know, just I have this flash of this is completely off task other than it's about a recorded voice. So when I was in high school, I had this biology teacher who he taught like the AP, like fancy smart biology classes, but they also taught like the lunkheads like me.
Yeah.
Biology. And he would literally come in, put on a tape, like he had taped his lectures. He
Oh
would
wow.
put the he would play us his taped lectures and then, like, go off and, like, clean Bunsen burners. Like, how bad is that?
He
I mean, as a
was
teacher,
sounds like he was yeah, had other priorities.
oh my god, it's so bad. Anyway, you're way better than that biology teacher. Mr.
Thank you.
Ross.
Thank you.
Mr. Ross, that was his name. Mr.
Mr.
Ross,
Roth.
if
Okay.
you're out there, you suck.
Oh, I see Mr. Roth just joined the line.
Hi, Mr. Ross. Here I learned everything about biology from you. But yeah, I think the kids issue is, I never really planned on having kids, but I did and it sort of happened, sort of kind of like your writing career.
Yeah,
So accident.
just accidentally fell into it.
Yeah. But I did have like maybe let's just maybe hit one more question so we can
Sure.
wrap up. I think we're almost at an hour here and I know, like, we've talked about how incidental your career was, but you actually had your first book at age 7 or 8, right? No Way Out.
Yeah. Oh wow. You went deep in the
I
research. Yeah.
did, I researched, but, so what would you say to, like, your younger self, that kid or you just, an earlier version of yourself, and by proxy, all young writers out there, like, what would you say to them to keep them going or to get them motivated to stay on as a writer.
Uh, I mean, I think I'm going to flip that a little bit, the question. So I think sometimes I need to like pay attention to my 7-year-old self,
Yeah.
the kid who was like scribbling out goofy, weird stories in his bedroom. Because I think he kind of had the right idea. That version of me had the right idea, which is like write for the joy of it. I wasn't
Mhm.
writing this book thinking, there's no way out, that I was like scribbling by hand and illustrating the cover. I wasn't doing that because I had some, expectation that anyone was ever going to publish it. I would write these stories and then take them to school with me and read them out loud in class. Like my teacher would like let me read them out loud. And like the best thing in the world was when kids, like my classmates, would laugh. And that I kind of, for a long time, I kind of lost that as a motivating factor. Like I got older and I got more serious about it and was like, okay, I got to try to impress the imaginary New Yorker critic in my brain, or the reader for some literary journal or something. And instead of like thinking like I'm just going to write to have fun and find the joy in it, and I think which was what I was doing when I was 7. So yeah, I think my advice to people at any age would just be like write for the joy of it. Find the fun of what you're doing, and if it gets published, great. If it gets a bunch of likes on Substack, that's amazing. If it doesn't, hopefully you had a it did something for you in your own life, and you found some joy in it, and that's I think the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I always think like it's great to say that, and I'm sure you mean it because you were obviously writing all those years before you were making money from it. But I always like, do you think that you would be, still appreciating like your writing so much and getting the joy out of it if you hadn't? Like if you just were continually getting rejections, like do you think you'd still, be writing into your 80s and publishing
Uh,
with a guitar?
yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting sort of alternate alternate dimension to step
Alternate
into.
reality.
Um, but I mean, I like to think I would. I mean, I certainly stuck with it long enough, and I've also had periods where in between books where things have gotten rejected, or I've had failure along the way, and as much as it kind of makes you want to quit, it also can also like light that fire and make you want to like keep working at it. So I think I probably would have I would I think, and then there's no guarantee that I'll have any success in the future, right? So
True.
I'll I but I certainly plan to be writing um you know well into as long as I'm coherent, which some might argue that I've already reached that point that I'm not coherent anymore. But um, no, I mean, I definitely want to keep doing it forever. And like I said, I mean, I never had any expectation that I was going to make money from this in the first place. So it's kind of
It's
it all
all
feels like a bonus to me.
all gravy, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was asking the question not to put you on the spot, but because I do believe that, you inherently love writing. But I just kind of asking for a friend, right? Like asking for me, like, at what point do I guess what is the balance between continuously writing for your own edification, for your own joy, but still pushing for an audience? Because I do think having an audience is a value add. Like it does change the way you write and
Hmm.
it helps you grow. Right. So like what do you think that you have learned precisely or particularly from having an audience? What is
Uh, yeah. I mean, it's also like an interesting question. Like, what do you mean by audience? Because like
readers, like people
yeah,
in
like the Substack audience is very different from the
yeah.
book audience. And I think they can both be good and bad. I think sometimes the good thing about Substack is that you have this immediate data about how your piece of writing is doing, and you get this immediate feedback. The bad thing is you have this immediate data and you get this immediate feedback. You like you write something and then you're just like, oh, only I've only gotten 3 likes in the last, it's been 6 hours and I've only gotten 3 likes and one comment or whatever. And and that can really feel kind of, like it can kind of drive you crazy. And I think with the good thing about with traditional publishing is you write something and you put it out there, and then yes, you have occasional sort of feedback from how well the book is doing or not, or maybe how poorly the book is doing, but it's not like so in your face. I think taking it back to what you said is like what would you how should you sort of approach in your own like life, and I think that's just sort of an assessment that everyone has to make on their own. I think you've got this you've got this sort of self-published thing
Mhm.
that you're working toward, and you've got the Substack, and you've got these live videos that you're doing,
Mhm.
and I think that's kind of the model more than what I was doing with my career for such a long time, which is just like every year or so I'll put a book out there, or a publisher will put a book out there, and maybe I'll post about it a couple of times on Facebook,
Mhm.
and then call it a day. Like I think that's increasingly impossible. It's kind of amazing that I managed to do that for as long as I did. That was kind of the reason why I got on Substack and started trying to do other things, is because I realized like you kind of do need to have more of a connection with an audience, and um, so I think you're I think you're ahead of the game, or maybe not ahead of the game, but you're certainly playing the game
Yeah.
the way you're supposed to, and at the same time not getting lost in it, right? Like you can't just spend all your time making content. You have to also, like, if you want to write books, you have to like write books and not just sort of like post and post and post and be on notes and make
Yeah.
video stuff. So it's kind of I think that's the challenge, is just finding that balance, and
Yeah.
being able to do it in a way that each thing sort of enriches the other.
Yeah, exactly. I think the balance is key. And I mean, I when I came on Substack, I was really just about like trying to find a platform. Like here I am, like I'm 55, and I wouldn't say I'm trying to like change my career to become a writer, but I'm definitely trying to put my writing out there. And
Yeah.
I'm self-publishing. I think I emailed you. I have an idea for YA series, and
Hmm.
so I'm hoping to work on that this summer. But so I came on Substack just like, okay, I need to build a platform. What I found was so much more, like a community, and and really the ability to be like in conversation with other writers and your readers, and that's so valuable. That, like you
Yeah.
said, didn't really. You probably could have been doing that earlier, but like, well, what? Why would it? Wouldn't have occurred to you because you are already sort of at the pinnacle, like being a published writer. Why do I need to go and like tweet about it or whatever? But
Yeah. I think for me anyway, it was like social media. It wasn't that I mean, I tried with several different forms of social media, with Facebook, like like with Twitter, I was kind of on a little bit, and Instagram I tried, and I, the thing that kept me from doing it was that it like literally made me want to like stick my head in the wood chipper. I just really disliked and continue to dislike most social media. And Substack was the first place where I didn't want to stick my head in a wood chipper. I was like, oh, this is fun, and the people here are literate, and it's not just a bunch of like hot takes and political conspiracy stuff or whatever, trying to make yourself look attractive or something. And it didn't make me feel bad, and I think that's something that that I still feel with Substack, and and so I think had I discovered it earlier, I probably would have gotten into it earlier. But it kind of took me. I found it at the time that I found it, just like I guess most people do. Some people were like early adopters, and other people are just now kind of discovering it, and hopefully it'll continue to grow and continue to be a place where, as you said, we can find that community, and people can sort of all thrive together.
yeah, in our big Substack commune.
Yes.
Well, we should wrap it up, but I really appreciate your time, and I feel like this hour went by so fast. I have
I
to.
know it's just a fun
We never
chat.
even talked about the naked Germans. I mean, come on.
How did we not? That'll have to be for
I
the
don't
next
know. That
video.
that seems like a little bit of a problem, but yeah. So next time, naked Germans. So, but yeah, thanks for coming on, and stay focused on your writing. I'm trying to like summarize what you said. Um, I can't summarize. My brain is
Stay
gone.
focused on your writing. Accept that you're going to get rejected. Self-publishing is about learning, and you might, some of the stuff you learn is going to be
Expensive.
helpful, and some of it's going to be like, maybe, frustrating. And yeah,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
get a degree in industrial distribution. That would be my advice. Or do, actually. It worked out for
Yeah.
me. So maybe
Yeah.
it's a
And
good
Starbucks
writing
isn't that
advice.
bad. Sounds like Starbucks isn't that bad. And, shit jobs, I think everyone should have a shit job. My
Oh.
husband's daughters, they're, you know, adults, and
Mm.
neither one of them had shit job. Like they went to college and had got their real job. They never babysat, they never worked
Mhm.
at McDonald's, nothing.
Right.
What is wrong? Like to me, that's a problem. You gotta have a shit job.
I had a lot of those. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're in a glamorous one. Okay, well, thanks again, and thank you to everyone
Yes.
who joined us, and
Yeah. Thank you.
definitely sub to Lee Bacon and laugh because he's got a great
And
brr.
subscribe to Michelle as
Yeah, so
well. Yeah.
subscribe to me, States of Matter, and look for more videos. Come probably next week or the week after. I'll be, going back at it with more writers and hear their stories. So
Amazing.
take care, all. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Have a good week. Take care. How do I
All
say
right. Bye.
bye? And there it is.